what are some of the things that you went through that maybe some other men you hear complain online, such as, I don't see my kids, I'm worse off than I was previously, and I just feel like I have to fight against the world all over again?
Yeah. So some of, I'm guessing that my story isn't all that unique, but I will say this. I am very fortunate that I live in Colorado. And what I mean by that is a lot of the kind of custody decisions are kind of state by state as far as how those are enforced. And within the state of Colorado, they do really push towards a 50-50 custody for both parties whenever possible. And I think that is probably becoming more prevalent around the country, but that has not always been the case. And it is still very lopsided overall in the favor of the mom as far as parenting time. But to be more specific to my story, um, I went through a lot of the things you're discussing. I was ordered to pay an extraordinary amount of alimony and, in addition to that, child support, even though I had essentially 50-50 custody of the kids. And I had to fight for the 50-50 custody. It was not granted to me. I had to go through the process uh, of having a lawyer of going through the legal system because at the time, we had somewhat of a volatile separation and divorce, and part of that volatility um, led to us kind of digging our heels in the ground a little bit more. And I don't necessarily recommend that approach. I mean, whenever you can settle it outside the court systems, it's going to be much more agreeable. And, once you start bringing in lawyers, it automatically leads you to a point of being a contrary relationship. But sometimes it's necessary. And in my case, it was, or I felt that it was. So we had to go through that whole process, and it cost me a lot of money. And then I ended up paying about 60% of my income to my ex-wife for that first chunk of time between the alimony and child support. And so that was a struggle for me. And so, as you had mentioned, my life was clearly felt like it was worse off, at least from that standpoint, as I was entering into this process. And I was trying to show my kids that I was there and I was available and I would be present, but I was felt that I was put in a system or in a situation where I was required to work more than I wanted to in order to provide for them appropriately. And so, yeah, that challenge was real and it lasted for a while. And I did struggle with blame and I did struggle with resentment. And I'm not even saying that I shouldn't have, felt that way or felt those things, but I can tell you it didn't serve me, and when I was sitting in this place of blame and I was sitting in this place of resentment, it was not helping me. And more importantly, it was not helping my kids. And, our kids do not ever need to see us as ex-spouses saying or doing anything negative towards their other parent. And I did make sure that I never said anything negative about the girl's mom. But boy, those thoughts were there. and they and I had a lot of struggle internally with that. And so, that's that piece of the isolation that that a lot of people don't talk about. It's not just not having a lot of people around to talk with, it's having these really stressful things in your life that you have to internalize or you feel like you have to internalize. And so, yeah, that was a struggle, but, we made it through it. And I can share more about that if you like, but those are some of the things I went through.
I look at some of the women I've dated, and I don't have any children. And if I would have children with them, I already know all the names that I would be called, right? They would call me a monster. They would call me all these other things. And thank God I have a thick skin because I would just brush it off and continue with on my way. But if I had children and I was in a situation where I was married with them and there was a possibility of me losing myself, the finances, for the most part, you can recover from, right? But when you start to lose yourself, you become a person you didn't think you ever were, because now you're in a situation where you have the option to be petty. You have the option to be vengeful. You have the option to be spiteful. You have the option to call this person names, especially when you feel that they're holding your feet to the hot coal and just taking everything from you. I remember I was watching an interview and there was a fantastic part of it. And I said to myself, this is where I believe a lot of men struggle, is that when there's a separation or a breakdown of the marital unit and they decide to move out and they give up the house and everything, if they start to build a new family, they still have the ghost of Christmas past there, right? They still have, okay, I want to get another house, but I'm still 50-50 on this mortgage. I want to start a new family, but I'm still spending X amount of dollars in spousal support and child support. But when you're able to overcome that, it's like a period of triumph. So for you, when you were able to not go down the road of continuing to be vengeful, spiteful, and having these thoughts of, I want to call her all these names. How did that feel to let go of that part of your life?
Yeah, well, I'd like to share a story that kind of led me down that path. It kind of led me to that turning point. And while I say that I never really said anything derogatory about the girl's mom, which is true, I'm referring to towards the kids. I did still, vent about her to my friends, and I still did, kind of struggle with that with my family and others, my parents, I mean, and others. Um, but there was a moment that kind of changed everything for me. Here's the thing: is that when you are in that state of blame and you're in that state of you're basically in a state of being a victim and feeling like you have been victimized. And sometimes you have, right? I mean, that's not fake news, right? Sometimes you were a victim. But this is the story of what happened to me is I remember clearly there was a moment where I went to pick up my daughters for their parenting time, and my oldest two daughters, who were 14, 15 at the time, refused to get in the car with me, and they refused to come with me for my time with them. And it kind of broke me a little bit, if I'm being honest. I mean, it led me down this kind of spiraling path. And it's this feeling of feeling rejected and feeling a lot of anger. And really, the first thoughts that were going through my head were, what is their mom telling them about me? What is it that's got them to this point where they don't want anything to do with me? And those were my initial thoughts. And that's what sat with me for a while. But there was a moment when I was in my house alone at night, just kind of looking at myself in the mirror, probably looking like a crazy person as I was like kind of yelling at myself in the mirror, having a conversation that was kind of rough with myself. And I basically was just saying, Rob, this cannot be what your life is going to be like. This can't be the end of the story. There's got to be more to it than this. And, I've always loved my family, but I made mistakes. I made mistakes during the separation process. I made mistakes after we were divorced. I didn't always handle things well with my oldest girls, and I struggled in my relationship with them at times leading up to that.